Laurie Huston's News for the Heart is dedicated to helping you give a voice to your own soul. Our hearts have the power to free us from pain and the struggles that keep us from awakening to our true essence. Join Laurie now as we delve into our heart and soul to find the path that will open us to the possibilities and lead us to the life we love to live.
And good afternoon. This is News for the Heart, and it's the last Tuesday of the month, which means we have our awesome co-host Tom Campbell with us. And we're approaching that month that I like to call Intuitive Soul Love Month. And I know we talk about it a lot, and really that's what all of Tom's work's about. But I wanted to look at, the different definitions that we have, because love really is a culmination of all of our different experiences. And when we look at it from that perspective, we could see that maybe our definition of love isn't really love. And Tom and I talk a lot about the fact that often it's us in need instead of in love. I just wanted to look at it maybe from a different perspective, maybe from a way that we haven't said it before, but it is Love Month, and it's always about love over fear. And so welcome to the show, Tom.
Welcome, Laurie. It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
Yeah.
Love is a good subject because that's the core of everything. That's it. I think it was Peter or Paul, I think it's all the same person, in a letter to the Corinthians said, quote, God is love. Yeah, that's pretty simple. And I talk about the larger consciousness system. And I say the larger conscious system is love. Well, that's what it's about. It's about becoming love, evolving to where you become love. So love is at the very core and center of all of our problems and all of our successes. So let's talk about love. As you mentioned, it is more typical for people to fall in need than it is for them to fall in love. Mm-hmm. Love is something that is freely given. Love is about other, not about self.
Good reminder.
I mean, we talk about self-love, but self-love is really not a good phrase. It ought to be called self-like. You really like yourself, because if you don't like yourself, you are depressed. You're unhappy, and it's hard to grow when you're in that state of mind. So liking yourself is very important. If you don't like who you are, then that, I think, is a basic definition of depression, when you just don't like yourself. So that's a problem. But let's not confuse the like and the love. Okay, like has to be earned. So if you like somebody, they earn that by being nice to you, by being honest, by being straightforward. And you can like a person, and you can take that like back and not like that person. Like comes and goes. Love isn't like that. Once love is given, love is given. You don't take it back away. Here's the kind of the poster, a child for that, and that is parents have a child, and the child gets into drugs. The child gets caught, robbing a 7-Eleven or something. A child goes to jail. And you may not like the child. You may say that child's just unruly and been a problem our whole life, but you still love the child. You can't help that. Or you have a mother or father that isn't nice to you. Well, you don't like them. You still love them just because of the relationship you have. There's still that connection that's undeniable. So that's what I mean. And I said that love is something freely given. And once you give it, you've given it. You can fall out of like, and it's the same with trust. You can fall out of trust. Trust has to be earned. You don't just give somebody trust. They have to earn that trust. But you do just give somebody love. And sometimes it's because of the relationship, mother, father, children, whatever. But grandparents, it's family. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's somebody you meet. And for whatever reason, you love them. And when you love them, you'll always love them. You might not always like them, but you'll always love them, and you'll care about them, and you'll hope that they're doing well and that everything is working out for them, even if you don't ever want to talk to them again. You still love them. So that's one thing that's different about love. Love is just something you give away. It's not something you expect to get anything in return for. You may or you may not. That's not what it's about. It's just freely given and it's gone. Now, I like to define love, love between two people, as unconditional love, because unconditional love is the only kind of love there really is. Love has no conditions. If it's, oh, I'll be with you if you do, if you do these kind of things for me, and you'll stay with me if I do these kind of things for you, that's not love. That's conditional. It's a bargain. It's a deal. It's an agreement. It's a contract, even if there's no paper written up. Because they tend to write papers up, what each party's going to bring to it and who gets to walk away with what, prenuptial agreements. But in any case, if it's not, if it comes with any kind of agreements, of things you have to do, they have to do, then that's not love. That's something else. It's a deal. And that's what most people do. They need, which means they find somebody who meets their needs better than other people. And it's mutual. A meets B's needs and B meets A's needs. So they think they've fallen in love because they get their needs met. And those needs are many. It's not just, the need for children, the need for sex, the need for companionship, the need, just to have somebody around to come home to. There's lots of needs for support, needs for money to live. It's just, there's lots of needs, and all of those needs kind of wad up into a bundle. And so you find somebody who really meets your needs, then you like them. Remember, like is something that also comes and goes. And you like them enough, you say that you're in love with them, and then you run off and get married with a conditional marriage that says, he does this and she does that, and neither of them can do this other thing, and you have these agreements, and they tend to not last that long because people change, and their needs change, and their attitudes change, and when they do, what looked like a really good arrangement, a good deal, turns out to not be such a good deal after all. Maybe it was a great deal for 10 years or 20 years or 1 year or whatever, but then it's not so great anymore. Needs aren't getting met. So that's different. That's not love. That's a different kind of thing. And so that makes the marriage what some people call an open marriage. But I don't like that term, because open marriage kind of implies a very singular issue that's open, and that's sex. Have sex outside of marriage is okay. That's an open marriage. But I'm not talking just about open for sex, but open for everything, non-conditional. Everything's open. And this makes sense in a way when you say, well, how would you feel if you knew that your significant other was only coming home at night because they felt obligated, or because it was legally required? That's not the kind of relationship you want with a significant other. You want them to come home because that's where they want to be. They want to be with you. And if it gets to the point that it's just obligation, then you should think of separating and finding something else. Because when you're just coming home because you're obligated, it's not just you, but everybody around you, your children as well. They get that sense. Mom and dad really don't like each other very much, but they're staying together anyway. And that makes it very difficult when they grow up trying to form in-depth, committed relationships. They have a hard time because in their mind, those aren't so good. They don't work out. And a lot of people say they don't really believe in love to people because it doesn't really exist. Well, it does. But not many people go that route. all love is unconditional. If it's not unconditional, it's not love. So if somebody in a relationship says, oh, I need to go elsewhere, this doesn't work for me anymore, then the other partner should say, okay, I wish you well because I love you. I want you to be happy. And if what makes you happy is you have to go somewhere else, then I support it. I'll help you pack. I'll help you out with that. So in that sense, there's freedom in the relationship. Everybody is free to come and go as they want to. And what that ends up creating is it creates the situation that if you want that person to come home because they want to, you have to be worth it. You have to earn it. Every day, you have to say, I have to earn that like, that they like me. Remember, like's earned. I need that. So I have to be nice. I have to, be equitable. I have to care. I have to be that person needs. Otherwise, they'll find that someplace else. Whereas when you're conditions, well, it's almost like you own each other. Susie's mine and I'm Susie. So it's almost like you own each other. And now you don't have to be that concerned about whether Susie's happy or not because she's yours and she's obligated by law to stay yours. And you see how that just isn't good. It doesn't generally work out to a good end. Relationships need to be unconditional love, and they need to be free and open. When they don't work, they don't work. And it's much better for them to separate and find something that does work than to slog on through with life because they have to, or they feel trapped, or whatever. So that's why I particularly, and I guess it's just me, not a lot of people think this way. I don't really care for the traditional marriage because that's all conditional with a lot of, if this and that, then this other thing. And I think those conditions undermine a relationship. Once you feel like you're in it forever, till death do you part, then you stop feeling like I have to earn that like. Every day I need to earn that like, not once a year, but every day. And that means the courting phase never ends. You see, in the courting phase, you're trying real hard to make that person like you. And then after that phase goes away, you really don't care so much because you own them, and you just settle in for whatever happens, which mostly doesn't work out all that well in the long term because change. You're not the same people that you were when all your needs met each other's needs. Needs change. So anyhow, I think a better idea is unconditional love. You give your love, and if that relationship doesn't work, then you find something that works better. Now, of course, there is one sticky point in that, and that is if you have children and those children are very young, separation is you have to think about another dimension to that. Just because you and your significant other would like to go your separate ways, children do better with two parents than they do with one. So that is another consideration. You may want to stay until those kids are at least teenagers, if not 18, but at least teenagers, where they can deal with those kinds of things in life without it coloring their whole attitude about life. So
Doesn't
that
color it anyway, though. I mean, if
it
you're
colors it some, yeah, but
I would rather hear the parents find a way to make themselves like each other again than to continue, I don't know, playing a game, because it just feels so contrived it feels awful if you're the child in a relationship where your parents are miserable and fighting and arguing all the time, and that can't be a good way to grow up either.
Exactly. That's true. But
Right.
if you try to fake it, that doesn't work either, because everybody completely, especially children who are very they know that right away.
Yeah.
What you can do is grow up a bit and say, oh, we have trouble getting along. But whenever the children are anywhere within hearing distance or seeing distance, we're nice to each other. We're polite to each other. And if we've got a disagreement, we'll wait to air that until later. So you just make up some rules until your children are grown up to the point. But yes, it does make a difference about the age, because when the kids are 5, 6, 7, 8, they, even younger, 2, 3, 4, things that they see, they internalize, and those things become beliefs and or fears if they're bad things, and they're irrational. And 20 years, they don't remember those things, but those things will have a deep effect on their life. There'll be a fear, there'll be something there. So if the parents are fighting all the time, then they may have a real hard time forming a relationship. Yeah. That relationships may just be really difficult for them, you see. Whereas if they're 15 or 16 or 18, that's not the case. Early years is where you form attitudes, where you form fears, where you form these dysfunctional ways of seeing life. And though you forget about them as you get older, they're still there and they still will influence every choice you make. Whereas if you're a 15 or 16 or 18-year-old, that's not the case. You can understand it. You can say, well, mom and dad just have these disagreements. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to have disagreements like that. So you differentiate yourself. But when you're young, you don't. So particularly when the kids are, I'd say, under teenage, you know, from, you know, I'd say 14, 15 up, they're old enough to see things more adult-like. But when they're younger than that, you can create problems for them for the rest of their life by not giving them a happy, positive attitude toward male-female relationships. They end up, you know, at a big disadvantage. So that's an important thing. So that's just one fly in the ointment when I say that, well, if the relationship doesn't work out, then you maybe should separate. But if you have kids, that's one of the responsibilities when you have kids, to not to argue in front of them, not to fuss, not to raise your voice, but to be kind and considerate and even caring of each other. If you've got any little minds that are around that are going to create fears and problems for them for the rest of their life, that's an important responsibility that has to be looked at. But otherwise, given that is something that kind of has to be dealt with. Otherwise, if you don't like each other anymore, well, it's time to find a situation that you like. Particularly if your children are, say, teenagers or older, because raising teenagers in a house where there's bickering and fighting and so on, you know, isn't healthy either. You know, so at that point,
all their hormones and everything that's going on
exactly. At that point, they can understand, and probably finding a different situation is the better idea. Separating and finding ways that both parents can interact with the kids. So maybe you're constrained to live in the same city, or, you know, have houses next door to each other, or some other kind of accommodation. That's another constraint, but that's a lesser constraint than if they're much younger. And the older they get, the fewer those constraints are. And you can do pretty much what you like once the children aren't involved. So that's much better. It's much better for both people. And let's say I'm in a relationship with a female, and she'd like to go do something else. Well, if I say, no, you have to stay here with me, I don't want her coming home because she has to. I want her coming home because she wants to. And if she's going to be happier someplace else, I'm happy for her for being happier. And though it wasn't my idea, guess what? I get to start a whole new adventure. My life just opened up to a whole lot of new possibilities. And to me, that's good. You know, if you go through life fearful about change, then you're going to stay fearful your whole life, because change is just going to run over you and continue to run over you your whole existence here. Change happens, and it happens to everybody, and it often is a slap in the face. It's not what you want, but it happens anyway. So if you can get over the fear of change, then you have to look at it as new opportunity. All right, my significant other wanted to go elsewhere. Have a nice life. Go elsewhere. I wish you the best. Now I've got a new adventure on the way. I wonder how that's going to work out. So you start doing things differently. You get back into circulation with people. You change your lifestyle a bit. And the way it works out is within, 6 months, a year or two, you'll find somebody that you'd much rather be with than that spouse that didn't want to be with you. And everything will be better. And you'll look back at it and say, wow, that was the best thing that ever happened. Us breaking up, because now we're both happy, both happier than we were. So it tends to work out that way. So you keep a positive attitude and don't get fearful, then things will always work out for you. If you're a very positive person, you'll be attractive to people. People will want to be around you. If you're a very negative person, they won't. If you spend all your time complaining, they won't. But if you can, get rid of those fears of change and fears of not being good enough and that sort of thing, then you'll find somebody else who'll be delightful. And it won't take that long to do that. It's just there. You just have to throw off your fears and go back out and have an adventure. So that's kind of from a relationship viewpoint, that's the idea of love. Love is something you give. Love is something once given, it's gone. You don't take it back. Like and trust comes and goes. Love doesn't. It just goes. You give it up. And you'll feel that way forever. If you truly love somebody, just because they leave or just because they take drugs and go to jail, you'll still love them just the same, no matter what. You have a child and that child is crippled, or that child has issues, or that child is, has, we used to say the word, mentally retarded, but that's a no-no word now. But whatever the new politically correct word is, then you don't stop loving them. You don't say, oh, this one is defective, let's put them back. You love them anyway. That love is unconditional. It's just the way it is. So that's love. And now if we look for a definition of love, my definition for love is a little wonky, because I'm a physicist and I think in terms of wonky sometimes, but it's the nature of a low entropy consciousness. That would be my definition of love. It's just the way a low entropy consciousness behaves with love. So you have all these fears, and the fears are what from not loving. The fears are all self-focused. Fear is about you. I mean, we may think it's about somebody else. Oh, I'm afraid for my children. Well, yes, because you don't want to lose them, because it would affect you as well as it affects them. So love is the nature of a low entropy consciousness. That is a consciousness with a high quality consciousness. And you'd have to know a little about my work to really get what that means. But the bottom line is that if you get rid of the fears, and the fears create the beliefs, and it creates the ego, if you get rid of that stuff, what's left is love. So you don't have to go out and do something special to make love or some sort. That's you naturally inside your consciousness. All you have to do is get rid of your fears, your egos, and your beliefs, and there you are, your love. You've got rid of that stuff. So those are the things that are kind of anti-love. And so that's what love is. It's just when you are no longer fearful, and that fear creates the ego and the beliefs, then what's left is love. So it's the nature of a low entropy consciousness to be love. And that brings us back to God is love. If there's any consciousness that is low entropy, you see that's God. Or in my words, the larger consciousness system. That's love. It's all about giving when it's love. It's how can I help? What can I do? Not what's in it for me. It's the opposite of fear, but it also is antithetical to self-centeredness. when you have fear, you tend to be self-centered because fear is about you, your fear, what you don't like, what frightens you. So fear is always self-centered. And one way to measure the maturity of a person, you know, how mature is that person? In other words, how grown up are they? Is to measure how self-centered are they. And if they are very self-centered, they haven't grown up much. They probably have an emotional or a spiritual age of probably 6 years old or something. And we know people like that who are plenty old enough to have grown up, but they're still very self-centered. And if you meet even a 6-year-old who is not self-centered and is very giving, well, that's one that's very mature, even if they're not very old. So maturity isn't about age. And besides what the clothing industry says, maturity is not about how big you are, how big around you measure. Maturity has to do with how grown up you are, how much you care about and think about others. How considerate are you? And not considerate from the viewpoint of your intellect. Because people grow up and say, okay, politeness is nice. That's the grease that lubricates social interactions, is politeness. But if you do that through your intellect, you're not really polite. You're just acting polite. What I'm talking about is being, not acting. I'm talking about being in such a way that you are kind, that you are caring, that you do want to be part of the solution to whatever relationship you're in. Not that you want to act kind or act nice. That's civilizing, but it doesn't help you grow up any. You got to be kind and be nice. You have to be love. It's not that you act like you're love, but you have to be love. That's different. It's very important not to get those two confused. So that's about love. So where would you like to go after that, Laurie?
Okay, so your definition, I like that, about lower entropy. And I could see how, I guess the bit that always brings me back when you talk, and every once in a while it comes up, about love as a gift. I mean, that's the place that we sort of get caught up, because we are in our heads, we are in our egos, we are in, of all the experiences that we've had, they've contributed to, well, where we are right now. So if, and those parents that, are staying for the sake of the children, or arguing and not thinking, I mean, those kids, they were probably treated the exact same way when they were kids.
Yes.
Before that, and before them. And it's a hard process to sort of step out and say, okay, but so how do we make that step? How do we say, okay, I don't want to live in want anymore. I don't want to have the fears. I want to treat the person with respect and kindness and love. And because honestly, I think we can pretty much love anybody. It's not about, I mean, it's obviously a slightly different when it's a romantic one, but I mean, love comes in every form. Family,
sure.
Our friends, like it's everywhere. So it's not, it's remembering that we get caught up and saying, oh, wait, whoa, let's step back here. When I get upset with something that has or hasn't been done, is that me? Yeah, that's me, not them. So at what point can we try and make that step forward a little bit gentler for us? Because once we realize that it's our responsibility, some people will clam up. Some people say, oh, I can't leave because, well, there won't be anything else. And that's a fear that a lot of people have, that stay for all the wrong reasons. But at the same time, what steps can we make? Because we don't actually have to leave the relationship if we can both come from that place of light that has been earned, or the trust that we can rebuild. But, what steps can we take? What can we do to say, okay, it's time to grow up and see? Because it happens so often now where I just sit and go, wow, did that just really happen? And why did I react that way?
Mm-hmm.
And then going back and going, oh yeah, yep, that's mine. I can own it. And when you own it, the energy that it just sort of dissipates. Like if you can truly say, oh yeah, wow, that was me. That had nothing to do with the other person at all. And when you can get to that place, then it's much easier. But it's those moments before where you're just freaking out because you're feeling rejected or abandoned, or all the things that all these experiences, because they're still in our ego that reminds us and tries to protect us. They just come flying out. We want that. So.
Okay, a couple of things there.
Good.
One, I agree with you that if there's a possibility of working it out in a situation, that's always better than just leaving. If somebody says, well, I'm not satisfied, then your first thought should be, well, why? And what can I do to change that? And you grow up into the situation. Again, you have to act in such a way to make that person want to come home because they want to be with you. So the action lies with both people. If somebody's not happy, then they should voice that. They should talk about that and say, I'm really not too happy here. And the other person, if they would like them to stay, says, well, how can I fix that? And they should be serious about that, not argue. Why aren't you happy? You ought to be happy. Help. You have to say, okay, what can I do? That's love. That's caring. It's about other, not about self. If your reaction is, well, why aren't you happy? That's about self. Something's wrong with you because you're not happy, rather than saying something's wrong with me because you're not happy. You see? So you have to fix the things you can fix, which is yourself. So yes, that's always the first step. Maybe I should have mentioned that, but it's not like, oh, that's not really a good thing. You should work on that and see if there isn't a way to change that relationship more positive. All right. The next thing is that we talk about, things just happen and you lash out or you get angry or you get upset. And like, where did that come from? Okay, that's your fear. That's where that comes from. It always comes from your fear, your ego, your beliefs. So one of the things you can do about that is to try to stay positive. Now, positive is just behavior. That's not necessarily being, it's behavior. But when you feel that urge to complain, you feel that urge to push back, to do things that are negative, things that are upset. You want to scream at that person, you want to grab them and shake them and that sort of thing. Just realize it, become aware of it, look for it, have your mind focused on, I don't want to be negative. And it's just behavioral. It's not deep yet. But if you can do that, what you'll find is eventually you'll train yourself to not react with negativity. That'll give you a chance to say, oh, I know where that's coming from. All right. I was abandoned when I was 3 years old and left in a bucket somewhere on somebody's back porch. And I've never gotten over that. So I need to deal with that. Okay, so you have a little time. In other words, the problem is you just react. It's an instant. Nobody thinks about how they're going to feel. Oh, I should be angry about that. Nobody thinks about that. The anger just kind of wells up in you. But if you're looking for it, you can catch it. And if you don't catch it before you express it, you'll catch it immediately after and pull it back. That can save a whole lot of heartache if you can do that. So you just have to focus. I want to be aware of whenever I'm negative, unhappy, dissatisfied, cranky for any reason, feel abused, feel used, feel unappreciated, all of those things that are negative, even stress is negative. Then you can say that I don't want to express that. And if you stop expressing it, you will find it to get easier and easier to catch it earlier and earlier. And as you catch it earlier and earlier, you'll find it even easier to not have it at all. And that's now your success. You've gotten rid of that fear. You've basically used your willpower to get rid of the fear just by slowly banishing it, first from your behavior and then last altogether. So it just doesn't come up anymore because you catch yourself before you even do it. Well, and that's a success. You see that. So you've gotten over the fear. So that's the way to do it. But you have to really focus on catching that behavior. Negative. But just look at your feelings. See, what we look at is we look at how justified is it? Oh, it's justified. She did that. He did that. It's totally justified. Anybody would be angry. I should be angry. See, we justify it. And that's counterproductive. Instead of justifying it, you have to realize that, oh, here's something I don't like. I'm feeling a little negative here. Oops, let's cut that off, at the bud. Let's not let that blossom into something ugly. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And if you keep doing it, eventually you'll conquer your fear. So that's just one way to do it, but you have to focus. Otherwise, it's all out. You've been ugly. You stopped crying, and now suddenly you feel like, oh, yeah, that was all about me. Okay. Well, if it goes that far, then go apologize. Say, I'm sorry. That was all about me. And here's why. I was dumped in a bucket and left on a back porch. And I've got anxiety and, and abandonment. I got all kinds of issues like that. And when you said that to me, it just triggered that. So I'm sorry, but that's me. I'm trying to grow out of it. And I appreciate if you help me grow out of it. So you elicit help from the person by explaining it, not covering it up. Oh, I acted that way. Now I'm going to have to bring her flowers. That's covering it up. You need to not do that. You need to talk about it, be open with it. Most people will be perfectly willing to help you work on things like that because they have things like that too. And they might start being honest with you about things you can help them do. So in any case, communication is key. Communication. If something you'd like to tell somebody, but you can't, do it anyway. Just do it. And you'll find out in the long run, it will tend to work out better than if you hold, So that's one thing you can do about it, but it will take focus. But you'll get focus if you really sincerely want to do it. If it's something that's important to you and you really want to change it, then you'll focus on it. If it's not all that important, but you just like to pretend that it is because that makes you feel better, then it won't work because you'll just do it and then you'll excuse it. So don't justify it. Just stop it. There's no reason for you to ever be angry or upset or even stressed unless there's fear involved. And it's your fear to deal with, nobody else's. You only feel negative because of your own fear. This idea that, George made me angry. No, George said something, but it resonated with a fear of yours, which is what made you angry. You get angry all on your own. You can't blame that on anybody else. It's all your thing. So you can fix it because it is your thing. So that's the good news. Now, one other thing to keep in mind is that fear is, like I said, is the opposite of love. So if you're very fearful, then your capacity to love, if you're not fearful, then your capacity to love is large. So there's a lot of people who are pretty fearful and they love to all the extent that they can love, but that amount of love is maybe about that big. Whereas if they weren't fearful, the love would be that big. And it makes a difference. So there are a lot of people who are loving up to their capacity, but their capacity to love is very small because they're still self-focused, self-centered, full of fear. So that's another thing. Think about that. Say, okay, what is my fear doing? Well, it's limiting your capacity to love. That's one of the things it's doing for you. You can't love but so much because the fear gets in the way. The fear makes you angry. The fear makes you think about yourself and what you're not getting that you want and what you should get. And why is that person being mean to me? And your fear and your ego and your beliefs get you all wadded up in self-referential discussions. And then you have wonderful justifications for doing all kinds of ugly things. So you need to avoid all of that and say, yes, I've got fears, and those fears are limiting the degree to which I can love. And then realize that if you're in a relationship and it's not going very well, and you're very limited in your ability to love, well, maybe that's why it's not going very well. And you may be giving it all you got, but that's not so much, because your fear takes away your capacity for love. That's a very serious problem. So that should be enough incentive for anybody to take it seriously, to get rid of their fears, get rid of their negativity. It's a very strong limiter on your life. It dominates your choices. The average person has so much fear that probably 80% of all the choices they make are modified by their fear. The fear makes those choices. Oh, let's go to the party tonight. No, I don't want to. The fear of, you'll stand in the corner by yourself and nobody will want to talk to you. That's kind of the fear. So your life is radically different once you get rid of fear. Suddenly, being positive all the time, now being positive all the time, not necessarily acting positive all the time, but being positive all the time, there'll be lots of friends, there'll be lots of things coming your way, lots of opportunities. And your ability to love is such that you can love lots of people. Your love isn't just to, your children and your spouse or just your grandmother or whatever. There's lots of people you love. You love the little old lady who lives next door. She's just delightful. And you love lots of people. Whereas if you're very self-centered, well, that old lady next door, she's not of interest to me at all, because what is she going to be able to do for me? So because she can't do anything for you, you really don't care about her much one way or another. You just let her get on however she gets on. You don't feel any responsibility or, to go over and maybe see if she's all right or bring her some cookies when you make some or anything like that. She's just there and you're here, and there's no need because there's nothing to gain there. See, that's self-centeredness. Whereas if you're not self-centered, you love that little old lady. She's just as nice as she can be, and you go over and you help her, and it makes you feel happy, makes you feel good, and she appreciates it. So your life will go from one of unhappiness to one of happiness if you make that transition. So it's really an important thing to do. And if you understand that importance, then you won't have any trouble finding the focus that you need to focus on change. Catching yourself first, catching yourself earlier and earlier, reducing the number of outbreaks you have, and then eventually getting rid of the fear. But that is not, it's real simple for me to say that. It's not necessarily a trivial thing to do. You have to have a lot of focus and a lot of stick-to-itiveness to do that, because it'll probably take you 3 or 4 years to get rid of your fear. It's not something you're going to do in a week or 2 weeks. Well, most people won't. Maybe some people do, but most people don't do that. It's years worth of effort to put into that, but it's worth it. It's really, really worth it. Fear does limit your capacity to love. And when you get rid of the fear, you tend to love lots of people. You're not upset at anybody, even the people that you disagree with. You're not upset with them. They just disagree with you, and that's okay. Whereas if you're self-centered, they disagree with you. Now they're the enemy, and you don't like those people that make it difficult for the rest of us. So it's just your whole life becomes sweetness and light, rid of your fear. Your whole life is piss and vinegar, meanness and negativity when you have a lot of fear. So it's like, which one would you like to have? Well, it's obviously you'd like the one with sweetness and light. So work on it. It's not easy, but it's doable. So this is, it's still all about love, right? Fear is the opposite end of love. So we talk about, the two opposite ends, but Love is a wonderful thing. That's what's going to fix the world. The world, the world will one day be fixed because evolution will take us there. But it could be a long trip if we don't start growing up, here one at a time. And nobody can grow you up but you. So it's 100% your thing to do for yourself. And other people can maybe make it more difficult for you because they keep triggering you, but you'll have to get past that. You'll have to just refuse to be triggered, refuse to make up justifications, refuse to buy into that, take charge, refuse to blame other people, take charge of your life. And you can do this. It's not impossible. It may seem that way. And of course, it's hardest in the beginning. Your first month or 2 months of trying to be positive is going to be difficult because you're going to try to be positive and you're going to mess it up. You're going to get negative and then you'll catch yourself. And then you'll get negative and then you'll catch yourself. And after a while, you kind of throw your hands up in the air and say, I quit. It's impossible. But don't do that. It'll get easier and easier and easier the more you work at it. In the beginning, it'll be the hardest thing you've ever done. But you keep working on it, and eventually it'll be less hard, and pretty soon it'll get easier and easier, and then you'll make a lot of progress. So stick with it. It's the only way to go. There is no other way to get there. That's the path toward happiness. Happiness is not something you can chase after and catch. Now it's yours. Happiness doesn't work like that. Happiness is the byproduct of a life well lived. You live your life well with love and caring for other people, happy. If you try to get happiness, if I got that, I'd be happy. If I had $1,000, I'd be happy. If my wife was nicer to me, I'd be happy. And you can do all these things, but none of that will make you happy. The unhappiness is inside. The unhappiness doesn't get generated on the outside. You blame the outside for it, but that's not the source. The source is all on the inside. So the only one can fix it is you. And if you don't fix it this time around, you get to fix it next time. And if you don't fix it that time, you get to fix it the time after that. So this is not a time test. That's the good news. You can take just as long as you like, as many lifetimes as you need to do this, but it's a whole lot better if you just get serious and do it. And do it now and struggle with it when it's so hard in the beginning until you master it. It's, like they say, there's no better time than now, to start. So that's love, I think, in a nutshell. Love's unconditional, something you give away. It's for free. There's no cost to your love. You just love for whatever reason, and mostly we don't have reasons, because if there's reasons, then it's probably not love. Love is just freely given. It's not because, this does this or is like that. It's mostly just you love them, and it's something that you do, and when you do, that's it. It's that way until you're gone. Like and trust, you got to earn. They come and go, but love does not. So love is a wonderful thing. Yes, God is love. That's a true statement. And we can become love if we just work at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be love.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, I like it. It's a hard one to sort of, because love, and obviously this will get into a different conversation, which we don't have time for, but we get so caught up in the meet cute and, how media portrays love. And can be so much deeper, so much better than what we even can imagine. But we just have to be.
Yeah. Well, most people confuse like and love.
Oh, yeah.
You like somebody, then you think you love them, but you really just like them, and you like them because of what they can do for you, which is all self-focused, because you're mostly full of fear. So it's an easy thing to confuse. It's just growing up is hard to do. But once you get started on it, it gets easier and easier and easier.
All right. Well, another great show with Tom Campbell today on love. I think, yeah, it's an important discussion. I know we do it a lot, but it's still important. All right. You've been listening to News for the Heart. We've been getting to the heart of what matters with Tom Campbell. I don't know. All about love. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome, Laurie. It's my pleasure to come here.